he wasn't interested in a franchise because franchise feels corporate. It doesn't feel local. It's not. There's the human interest is more difficult with a franchise.
Welcome to the Cleaning Up Podcast, Millionaire Secrets of the Home Services Industry, brought to you by me, Ron Holt, CEO and founder of Two Maids and a Mop, America's fastest growing cleaning company. I get a chance to sit down with home service industry pros and other entrepreneurial leaders so they can share their stories, their insight, their experiences. It's so much fun. You're going to learn so much. And you're going to be inspired to take your small business into a national brand just like I did. Let's jump right into the interview. And today we have Michael Kaplan. So Michael is a private equity and angel investor. That's what he does today. But many years ago, I guess not that long ago, but just a couple years ago, he exited a carpet cleaning franchise system called ZeroRez. So ZeroRez is another carpet cleaning company like a lot of other folks. But in Michael's case, he was able to be one of the very first franchisees in the system. He took over a struggling franchise in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area that was only doing about $300,000 a year. And about 10 years later was able to transform that business into an $18 million enterprise. And he's since exited that. And he has a real love and passion for the home service industry, just like we all do here. And he's here today to talk to us about that experience and also some things that he learned that maybe you guys can use for your own business here in Two Maids and a Mop. So, Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So I'm going to jump right to carpet cleaning because my guess is, like all of us in the residential cleaning business, you grew up loving the idea of one day owning a carpet cleaning business. Is that correct?
It was my passion from an early age.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I kind of fell into it. My goal was to buy a business, start a business, and eventually do business turnarounds and help fix and acquire businesses. And I had written plenty of business plans, thrown away plenty of business plans, and just couldn't quite wrap my arms around it. This is like early 2000s. Coming out of undergrad, and just, I was thinking too big, and, everything had to be, something cool in tech, and I'm not a tech person, or had to be a big marketing play. And I eventually ran into, through a mutual friend, an investor who was looking at buying a carpet cleaning business. And I started thinking about home service, and I could wrap my arms around it. It just made sense. I thought, this is a business that isn't too big for me. I'll spend maybe, 2-3 years in it, helping get it on the right track, and then flip it or keep it, but I'll move on to my next venture. Well, 12 years later, I eventually exited, but it turned into a lot more than I had initially signed up for.
I'd say so. 300,000 to 18 million is one heck of a story. It's one that, they really should write a book about, because I've been around a lot of franchisees in all sorts of different segments, and that particular story is just, quite frankly, unheard of. And so I know everyone listening wants to hear what were your magic potions that you used to pull that off. My guess is that there was a lot more elbow grease than magic that made it happen. But let's start with the beginning. Again, from what I understand, the original franchise was an existing territory that had been underperforming, and you guys somehow stumbled into it and took it over. Is that correct?
Yeah. So the business partner who actually found the opportunity, that investor I mentioned, he was a real estate giant in the Twin Cities. And this is, early 2000s, 2006, 2007. And he was always running into a need for carpet cleaning services. You're selling a house, you're buying a house. You need to be able to say, hey, don't worry about the carpet. I got a guy. And he couldn't quite find, the guy who wasn't a schlub. It's an industry, much like maids, very, very low barriers to entry. Anybody can hang up their shingle. We hired a guy once who had started his own carpet cleaning business at a pawn shop. He bought a little carpet extractor and a bucket of soap, and he got a quote for insurance, which he would show to customers. He didn't have insurance.
Right.
So similar story to your industry, probably. And,
very similar.
And so, business partner was running into all these schlubs. And he heard about this, miracle technology on the radio. ZeroRez, the whole shtick is, they've got this magic water. It's called electrolyzed oxidative water. Replaces a whole bunch of the chemistry traditionally used in carpet cleaning. And so we called him up and, had him come out and do a cleaning. And for one of his clients, and it worked great. And he was very entrepreneurial and reached out to the franchisor and said, hey, what if I bought a territory? What would that look like? Well, turns out the franchise territory sales guy was the owner of the Minneapolis franchise. So he was living in Dallas, Texas. And as you can imagine, running a startup in a new franchise system from out of town is a difficult proposition. And he wasn't quite getting traction. So he was excited about the opportunity to pawn off his problems on us.
All right. So it sounds like some really cool chemistry was behind the brand, an emerging brand. Sounds like it was, you were one of the early franchisees within the system. What made you think that you could do something? What did you see inside the business? Because I'm assuming that what you saw on paper was nothing but red ink. What did you see that allowed you to believe there was a bright future ahead?
Well, there were two, maybe three major factors. Like everybody who didn't grow up wanting to be a carpet cleaner, I initially scoffed at the opportunity. I thought, you know what, this isn't for me. There's nothing sexy about carpet cleaning, right? It's not the next Google. Right. Stupid entrepreneurs say that all the time because, if you go out to, hit a home run, you're probably going to strike out. You want to go out and try and hit doubles. And when I started to wrap my arms around that, I dug in a little bit deeper and looked at the carpet cleaning industry. And I ran across a statistic that said that something like 70% of people surveyed who had carpet cleaning service performed in the last 90 days couldn't accurately by name identify the company that provided the service. I thought, well, there's no brand equity out there. I mean, everyone knows Stanley Steamer, but there's nobody else in our market, which creates an opportunity. The second thing that got me excited was my exhaustive due diligence, which means, it's 2006. I picked up the Yellow Pages and I'm thumbing through the Yellow Pages, looking at carpet cleaners, and one of the more reputable folks in town, a company called Tillers, looked at their half-page ad and thought, oh boy, this is for me, because their ad, they had this checklist of things they were great at, things they did, things they didn't do. And one of the last ones on this, 5-point checklist was, we don't smoke in your home. And I thought, you know what? I can also not smoke in your home. The bar is set perfectly for a schlub like me. So I realized that there was an opportunity to create value, to be obsessive about customer service, and I could figure the rest out. And, maybe the third bullet point was the fact that it was green. Green was catching on in, 2006, but there was an aversion to green. And the reason I say there was an aversion from a consumer perspective was, again, from my perspective, people thought you had to sacrifice quality to go green. And so we thought, you know what? We can be green, we can be on trend, but not lead with green. Lead with efficacy, lead with service, lead with professionalism. And by the way, it's also green. And we thought that was pretty cool. So those were kind of the three big things that coaxed me into buying a failing franchise.
It's so funny hearing your story because it kind of resonates with me. Folks on the podcast and inside our franchise network have heard this story before, but prior to starting Two Maids and a Mop down in Florida, I decided to just sort of do my own, research. Internet was alive and well, but it was called Yahoo then instead of Google. And so it wasn't quite as simple as just Yahooing it as it is today. And so I hit the road and I just went town to town. Original store was in Pensacola, Florida, which is on Interstate 10. And you may or may not know this, but Interstate 10 connects the East Coast to the West Coast. It goes from Jacksonville to San Diego. So I had this great idea as a young buck with no responsibilities about to set on this two maids and a mop journey, that I would just hit I-10 from Pensacola and go west. And in every one of those cities that I would run into, I would pull over, find a Yellow Page directory, find the biggest ad, call that company, and then, ask them for an opportunity to just hang out with them. I did that all the way to San Antonio until I finally turned around. And I literally did that. And that's how I measured who I should talk to, was who had the largest ad. And so while the ads didn't say we don't smoke, what I did learn from it, I learned a lot of good things, but one of the more ironic things I learned is almost every store that I visited, and some were franchises, I wouldn't even say almost, all of the businesses that I visited with were very, very successful, but the ownership was totally disjointed. In some cases, the office itself was a complete mess, like it stunk, from yesterday's laundry, or cigarette smoke, to other cases where the business itself was in disarray, yet somehow, some way, they were just killing it, So that, to me, in a really weird way, was a vote of confidence that I had an opportunity in front of me in the residential cleaning industry, because if those guys could do it, surely I could. So again, it kind of resonates with me because it's similar timing and similar philosophy in how we both entered this industry. So let's jump right into when everything becomes so easy for you. You took over this business. It was doing $300,000 that first year. You hit a button and it all of a sudden started working, right? Is that how it took off?
Yeah, and we've patented that button, and it's the easy button. You just work speed, and no, So you were close on my bio. We bought a failing franchise within a franchise system that had gone from 0 to probably 25 franchisees in like a year, right? Or probably maybe a little bit longer, but really, really quickly. They had this great technology, and they didn't have the playbook on how to execute. So you meet, Papa John, love him or hate him, he probably made a lot of pizzas before he opened up hundreds and thousands of franchises, right? Sure. He had the recipe. He had where to put the store, what the marketing should look like, how the commercials should have the right kind of bubble on the crust, right? With the cheese. And they didn't have that at ZeroRez. They had an affinity for radio, primarily talk radio advertising. They had a plan where they were building their own equipment, which led to machines costing about 3 times as much as they should, with all kinds of mechanical problems. And they didn't really have the customer journey mapped out in a intelligible way. So you could kind of drive some business, but every time you turn your truck on, you lose money. A little bit upside down, right?
Right.
So the franchisees, they're a handful of years into this thing when we bought in, and we probably were pretty silly having not talked to enough of the franchisees, but we learned about 2 weeks into stroking the check for the business that they were on the verge of mutiny. There were about 20 franchisees left, and they just said, "Hey, we know we're gonna hurt ourselves, but we're gonna burn the ship down." Like they put all their energy into fighting the franchisor. We had just dropped way too much money on this thing, and so my business partner in particular, but the two of us led kind of the anti-mutiny faction of the business and quelled the natives, tamped down their enthusiasm and said, "Don't get mad, get even. Let's put the energy into fixing this thing." And so I joined, all the committees, the technology committee, the marketing committee, franchise advisory council, and, kind of took on a second job of working with the franchisor and franchisees to bring some sanity and purpose to development of the systems and the brand.
So at that point, all the franchisees hated you, it sounds like.
Well, No, we were well received. We weren't seen as corporate shills or anything like that. Not for many years. But eventually we were looked at a little bit sideways because some of the deals we were able to strike. But the enthusiasm raised up and people channeled their energy, with the suspicious eye, but we weren't the authority. We were the new guys, but we were enthusiastic, and we said, "Listen, we're going to figure this out together. We can help."
So you have a franchise system that, not to speak negatively of them, but it sounds like there was some support and training issues. You had a historically negative cash flow business, and you had never owned a carpet cleaning company before, probably never cleaned carpet before. And yet you were still able to turn this business into a $18 million enterprise. So let's kind of take it from step one, and if it's possible, take it all the way up to the word the end, when things were really rocking and rolling for you. I know there was some marketing magic. I know there was some personnel management. You already talked about the customer journey. We're a huge believer of customer experience here as well. So if you could kind of take us year by year and talk about that journey as a small business into a really large business.
So day one is to keep the lights on. That's the goal. It's to not rock the boat too much and figure out what you have. And so we spent the bulk of the time trying to wrap our arms around the metrics. If you don't measure it, you can't manage it. And so we obsessed about the numbers and the business model. We spent a whole lot of energy and time traveling and going out and trying to identify who was doing it right. We met consultants in the industry. We went to Chicago, we went to Dallas, we went to Atlanta, Salt Lake, Portland, all over the country, trying to figure out who has this model, who owns that easy button and can help us, steal second base, because, I would rather implement than create if we can. And so we spent a lot of time obsessing about that and slowly, figuring out how to drive inefficiency and stupidity out of the business we inherited. Now, most of the stupidity and inefficiency was our own creation, because we bought 3 trucks and 2 employees. There wasn't this massive business that we were walking into. So year one, we did about 310,000. We bought in September, so we were only responsible for a couple months of that revenue. Year two, we did about 700,000. So we were able to grow. We were able to invest. We were able to, get a 3rd truck going, so that we could reinvest all our money back into the trucks and the equipment. Meanwhile, we're working with the franchisor on making very little headway, but emotionally and psychologically making a lot of headway toward changing and evolving the equipment model from something that requires full-time maintenance and engineering on site to something that's off the shelf and has a efficacy that's sufficient to get the job done. Maybe it's not as powerful, but it's it's still really good technology. So to back up 30,000 feet, we kind of did triage in a handful of different categories. The media model and how to acquire the jobs, the service model, how to perform the jobs and get a 5-star review, and the equipment/technology model, how to make sure that you can deliver that service with we're not 2 maids and a mop. The ZeroRez model was 2 guys and a $130,000 truck, which was upside down. So we're pushing forward. Year 2007, we did about 700,000. And we realized that paid media was only going to get us so far. So we tried to find some placed media or earned media. And so started working on trying to get an article in the newspaper. It's the best thing we could come up with. We were on, we had a good digital footprint. Social media wasn't really a thing. It was all social reference sites. So we were on all those, writing blogs and, putting out our message and trying to give hugs where we could, ask for referrals as best we knew how. And, we're able to double the business, but knew that could only take us so far. So 2008, we obsessed about trying to get a feature in the big newspaper in the Twin Cities. And finally, September 11th, 2008, below the fold on the front page of the business section, an article got published about us. And we thought, this is going to be cute. It's going to be a nice little boost. It turned out to be kind of the launch of our brand to the public. And we had just moved. We had one computer set up that could schedule everything. It wasn't a cloud-based software. And we had 7 phone lines lit up for about 10 weeks straight after that. So that wasn't the easy button, but that was the thing that gave us the confidence to really invest in our business. And, meanwhile, October of 08, the world collapses. So we've got these two kind of sides of the coin that we're looking at. One side, business has never been better. We start running 7 days a week. We're hiring like crazy. We're trying to find more trucks. And yet the world's collapsing. Financial markets, Lehman Brothers, happens, and, liquidity dries up. And we're saying, oh, crap. Is this, where do we go with this thing? So we wind up 2008 doing about $1.1 million, maybe $1.2 million, somewhere in there in top line revenue. And we're looking at the world. January is seasonally just the worst. Many carpet cleaning companies, especially in Minnesota, shut down for the year. The consumer mindset is typically, I'll wait till spring because it'll just get dirty. And we said, we're never going to be able to make money if we take that approach. What if we try to turn that into a season? And, you're spending more time indoors. You're with your family, you're gathering. You need your indoor air quality to be top notch. And so it's instead of the worst time of year to get cleaned, it's the best time. And so we took that mentality, and when we bought the business, as I mentioned, we inherited a radio campaign that was highly inefficient, highly ineffective, but it's what we knew. And we had been working on it for a couple of years, and we knew what we needed. We just couldn't quite find it. So the world collapses in 08. We go to every radio station in town at the beginning of 09 and said, listen, we understand that you've got inventory shooting out your ears. The car dealerships are going bankrupt. They're not advertising. The insurance companies, Doritos, consumer brands are shutting down. You've got inventory. We've got demand. We're busy as all get up. Let's figure out how to make this work. We're not going to pay you for your ads, but if you weren't selling them because the car dealerships aren't buying them, what do you have to lose? Give us promotion for free. We will track the snot out of it. And when we get jobs, we will pay you a bounty. So it's kind of, we took pay-per-click to radio, and very quickly got laughed out of the room by 95% of the sellers of media in the Twin Cities. But the biggest station in town said, well, let's talk about this. And they said, well, we can't do a straight pay for performance. We can do a hybrid, very, very low cost up front with a fee or pay for performance for every job you close. And so we committed to a radio campaign on KQRS in the Twin Cities. And it launched at the beginning of February of 09. And really quickly, we realized it was just a dud. It was not going to work. I wrote really bad ads. In 06, we flipped a coin. Heads on marketing, tails on accounting. Well, I got marketing. So I'm the chief radio officer for ZeroRez. And wrote really bad ads. They were delivered really poorly. The price was too high, and thought, oh crap, we just blew it. We have committed to this radio campaign that we can't afford, that is, way too big for us, and it's not going to deliver. So we did kind of a quick rethinking of the strategy. We cut our price in half and said we will unbundle our services and just promote the cheapest thing that we can offer to get in the home, and then do consultative sales. I became the radio personality with the talent, instead of just having the DJ read the ad, technical know-how and, jazz hands, as it were, to get people excited about the brand. And then she would wrap up with an offer. And so February, we got our butts kicked. March, we booked 450 jobs from that radio station. We could do, as a company, about 380, 400 jobs all told. So we overbooked the month just from that one source. And that was kind of that first pillar that we had to figure out. It's like, holy crap, all of a sudden we've got the marketing figured out.
Right. So why don't we take a quick pause there? So you're 3 or 4 years into the business, if I'm following along with you here. You jump out of the gate with just a little bit of hustle, follow that up with some great press, and then follow that up with some really successful radio advertising. I got to ask a few questions here. So let's go back to that original press release or PR piece that you guys earned there. You talked about how you were that was a goal of yours. You wanted to get some local publicity in some manner, and you landed it. What type of, did you work with a PR agency? Did you just hustle yourself? I mean, did you offer to clean the journalist home, for free? I mean, how did you land the piece?
It's kind of a fake it till you make it. We didn't have a budget to go out and get PR. So I called and emailed and networked and fought to get a connection, to get an introduction to anyone at the Star Tribune, and found someone who made a connection. And it was a little bit thin, but it was the right person at the Star Tribune, Dick Youngblood, who was just kind of the guy who had been there forever. And he was wholly uninterested. And what I tried to do was each month I would email him and tell my story and repackage my story, because he didn't like my story. He wasn't interested in a franchise, because franchise feels corporate. It doesn't feel local. It's not, the human interest is more difficult with the franchise. So we talked about innovation. We talked about green. We talked about local kids do good. We talked about helping the community, trying all these different angles, writing all these emails to try and get that spark. And finally he said, all right, I will do the article. And I'd like you to leave me alone. Interesting.
I like it. So let's move on to this radio, because I mean, honestly, it's 2021 now. When you think marketing, most people go straight to the internet, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're going in the Wayback Machine, and you're utilizing radio. And I know that was still I guess a decade or so ago now, but still it wasn't necessarily the 40s either, So what gave you the promise, or the thought that you can make radio advertising work? Had you seen something in someone else's business that proved that radio advertising was a hit for them?
Well, I had seen efficient radio. I had not seen crazy successful radio, but I started, first we inherited a campaign, so we had a little bit of experience, and we had momentum. We had really tried to break down what we were buying, and not all radio works, and not all radio in all markets works, but in the right market where you, like the Twin Cities, which is underserved, there are fewer radio stations in Minneapolis than there are in Savannah, Georgia. I mean, it's insane. There are too few stations that matter, in the Twin Cities. So you get a lot of ears. And what do people really engage in? We started, talking to all sorts of companies about how they bought radio and why it worked. And, I had 10 different radio reps on speed dial that I would be talking to. Meanwhile, we're not buying any of their media, but I'm trying to get smart about it. And what I was able to distill out of it was that live and local is something people really pay attention to. If you think about it, if you've got, the rock station on and it's a jukebox, it's kind of in the background. But if there's a talk format, you're there, you're listening, you've got the radio turned up because you tuned in to hear what Tom Bernard has to say in the morning, or Dave Ryan, or whoever. You're engaged. You're listening. It's foreground rather than background. And when you think about the best type of client that I could get, and looking at job averages, looking at customer satisfaction scores, and just from anecdotal experience in the home, the customers that are easiest to please have the highest success rate, both from a service score and a job average, were referrals. And what is a radio testimonial ad other than a referral? It's, I trust these guys. They're great. I've had them in my home. They clean for my mother. They clean for my neighbors. That's the story that we started to tell. And buying that live and local testimonial from a talk-focused show. Doesn't matter if it's a rock station or classical music. If the day part you're buying is talk-focused, you've got a level of engagement where the people tuning in are there because they want to hear. So you can buy talk radio, you can buy sports talk, you can buy the rock station that has a DJ focused segment. And that's what we bought on KQ.
So you were buying a dime's worth of advertising that others paid $1 for. It sounds like you got a great deal, but what type of investment were you talking about? What on a monthly basis, how much were you investing towards the radio ads?
So we started jumped into the deep end with the biggest station in town. We bought probably $40,000 worth of media for about $15,000, but we were still broke. I mean, we had massive investment the year prior. We had probably $30,000 in the bank, and so it was a massive risk to jump onto a $15,000 commitment monthly. And we had never spent $15,000 on anything, aside from equipment. And it was a really big leap, but it was the right timing. And I think because a lot of people exited the market and there was so much inventory, you still had our ads became a lot more prominent because we bought a ton of frequency. For every ad we got, we were getting, we were paying a quarter of the price. So when other radio stations heard us, because, they're all commuters and they're all scoping the competition, and when they heard that we were actually on KQ, my phone started ringing again, and people said, well, about that pay for performance thing, tell me more about it. And soon we had 4 other stations that were ready to go. Now, that wasn't the long-term model to ask for something for nothing and we'll pay you after it works. But it helped us validate the model, because I couldn't start out and spend $45,000 day one on radio.
Right.
We didn't have $45,000 and that would have been an insane risk. But over the months and years, because of that moment of getting that really cheap media, we were able to validate the radio model that, when we went to Pittsburgh, day one, we had done tons of research to validate the thesis, but we started out, we had 1 employee, we had 4 trucks, and we spent $20,000 on radio that first month. And the second month in that new market, we did $60,000 in revenue, because we had, figured out what that magic spray looked like for the media model, and just dove in because we said it's the right market, it's the right radio for the right price, and we think we can scale it.
Well, I sense that a lot of small business owners listening to this interview right now are calling their local radio stations. I think everyone wants that type of return. That's a heck of a return you had there. Obviously, a large investment, so it's not for every small business owner because not everyone has $20K to invest on a monthly basis. But obviously, you get what you pay for. It sounds like. So let's move on to how you kept those customers. We're talking a lot about lead gen, lead conversion. At some point, you've got to earn their business, and they got to talk about you. You talked about the customer journey earlier during this interview. I believe customer experience is what truly the secret for any and every business, whether you're product based or service based. It doesn't really matter. I know that we've talked, and I've heard you talk to some other people. I know that treating customers the right way, doing things above and beyond was a mantra for you guys, and it allows you to earn repeat business, not just from people, but they would also, again, tell their neighbors and coworkers and others. What type of customer experience systems and process did you guys have in place? And talk about some of the fun stories you did for people along the way.
Sure. Well, to start, if I were to give a book recommendation, anybody who hasn't read or reread the book Raving Fans needs to do so now. It is the customer service Bible. It's a short allegory, really cute story, but it gets you thinking about what if in the world of customer service, and it's just a beautiful book. And we really modeled our customer service philosophies on that book. And we took to the notion that I use the phrase customer journey. I'm sure someone smart came up with that phrase, but I like it because customer service isn't an event. It's a process. And if you think about from the first moment somebody hits your website till all of the steps in between that and them writing you a check and then getting the follow-up emails, how do we do? Then getting the follow-up emails to re-engage them for more service or referrals. There's probably 30 steps in between. How's the phone answered? How's AR handled? How do you thank the customer? And I always looked at those as like kind of the little moments where you leave the little breadcrumbs and you're guiding them through this journey, helping them to draw the conclusion that they love you. And I became a kind of a disciple of Net Promoter Scores. And if you're not familiar with it, the quick math is there's a book called The Ultimate Question that some smart people wrote, and it talks through the notion that the defining question you can ask to really quantify customer happiness is not whether they liked you, but whether they're willing to refer you. And so the question that we glommed onto probably in 2009, 2010, we started surveying with a company called Listen 360. We surveyed every customer every time they had service. And we said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to refer us to your friends and family? And if they give us a 9 or 10, the follow-up question is, great, what'd you like? If they give us a 8 or a 7 or 8, questions, how can we improve? And if they give us a 0 through 6, the question is, holy shit, how do we fix it? And that became our KPI that really drove our business. Because if you think about it, in 08, we did $1 million. In 09, we did $2.5 million. And in 2010, we did $5 million in revenue. And so we're buying trucks, we're building infrastructure, we're taking on bigger lease space. We've got a lot invested into this. And we started saying, well, crap, what if people don't like us? I mean, what if this is a one-time show with the customer and we don't really know where we stand? So we started obsessing about it to try and figure out, is this investment viable? Because we're going out and buying, we had found new equipment, but we're still spending $75,000 a truck. And we're acquiring them like baseball cards. And we really had to obsess about it and figure out, are we doing well? Now, I learned that, a typical company in the service industry, call it a moving company or a carpet cleaner, at the time we were signing up for Listen 360, they had customers everywhere, and they aggregated all this information about net promoter scores. And the way they calculated the net promoter score is you take the percentage of people who are promoters and subtract the percentage of people who are detractors. You take the 9s and 10s and you subtract the 0s through 6s, if that makes sense. And a decent score in the industry was maybe 50, 55%. We came out of the gate and we were at 70. And we said, well, that's before we knew this was a thing. And so we obsessed about working that number forward. And when I left the business, we were consistently in the low 80s as far as net promoter score. But I don't know if I answered any of your questions there, but that was a little bit about how we thought about customer service.
I've always believed that customer service, customer experience are two very different things. Customer service is just what it sounds like, how you serve the customer. Experience is how the customer feels after you leave, after it's all said and done. And it sounds like in your case, people felt very good about the service. And I'm sure part of it was because you had great technology, really cool chemistry. But oftentimes you opened the door for someone as they were coming home from the grocery store. Maybe you high-fived the little kid, who came home from football practice and had talked about scoring a touchdown. Just the little things that you probably don't even teach, except it's something that you've ingrained in your people to say, hey, always be listening, always think about what can I do beyond just the trade, so that whenever I leave, the customer feels good about the service.
And that's a key point that we actually did teach again and again and again, that at the end of the day, the customer, the work you provided is not memorable. People don't remember, if that's Stanley Steamer out or Chuck in his truck or ZeroRez, everybody got cleaner carpet. There's varying degrees of success, et cetera. But, it's not what you did that sticks with them. It's how they felt after you did it. And if you are unremarkable, unrememberable, then we've lost, because we spent all this money to acquire a customer, and the real profit doesn't come until they tell a friend or call us back, and our acquisition cost is 0. So that was our goal. We wanted to acquire as many customers as we could. We grew a pair of, brass balls, for lack of a better vocabulary, by realizing that we had an effective model to not lose money while acquiring the customer via radio. And then our job was to acquire as many as we could, congregate them in a database, and put a bunch of alligators around them and give them little incentives to re-engage and call us back, so that down the road, when they did that, we can make a lot of money.
Well, again, going back to some of those numbers you just talked about, it sounds like usually from one year to the next, you had 100% or more growth year to year. One year, I even remember you said with $2.5 to $5 million. That's just amazing. That's over the top for a service business to grow that fast in just 12 months. So we don't have a whole lot of time here, but I want to talk a little bit about some of the organizational development that was required to manage that type of growth. I know in our own industry, getting the business is somewhat, I wouldn't say easy, but it's a lot easier than getting the people to do the work and keeping people motivated to do the work. So how did you grow? How did you manage the growth? How did you get people on board to grow with you through such a rapid pace there for such a long time?
So, I'll butcher it, but there's the old adage that one draft horse can pull like 2,000 pounds of weight, but 2 draft horses running in tandem can pull 18,000 pounds. I totally made those numbers up, but I think they're close.
I get it. Yeah.
But the point is, you can have a group of people and ask them to go perform, or you can create alignment and create something to fight for that they're all working toward, and they're going to be so much more efficient, so much more effective. So we took on the mantra that you can't spell culture without the word cult. And we created a fraternity of sorts. The most important investment I make in any business I buy, and I just bought one December 30th. They do drain tile and sump pumps. The most important investment after acquiring a business is buying a Weber grill, because you create community. Yeah, it's different during the pandemic, but you create community and culture and the chance to have shared experiences and make work something more than a job by just having burgers after work, by creating a place for people to have a beer and hang out and talk, and they start appreciating work differently and really obsessing about culture and finding little ways to reward the team and create moments for them to share experiences was invaluable. I mean, when I left ZeroRez, our Minneapolis location alone, spent probably, I don't know, $12,000 a year on cereal, so that people would come in a little bit early, have breakfast, grab a banana, and we didn't charge anyone for it, but it was an investment in creating that moment for people to hang out and, jam about work, talk about work. And, inevitably two coworkers are going to, share a conversation about what's going on at work. And they'll either do it in a positive way or a negative way. But we tried to give them those, like I said, customer journey. You've got that for your employees as well. And we realized we really had two customers. One was the customer that paid us for cleaning, and the second customer was the customer who worked for us. And my job as a business leader and investor was to make sure that I retained and grew relationships with both of those customers. And much like a customer that pays you, the employee can be a transactional customer or a relationship customer, and relationships run deeper than transactions. And so we really invested in our team, tried to have outings, and started with the Weber.
I like it. So again, everyone listening, buy radio ads and grills. And that you said there's no magic button, but it sounds like there's a couple. So, I want to talk more. We talked a lot already, but we're kind of running low on time. I'm hoping that maybe we can come back and we can really dig deeper into some of the organizational challenges that you had, because again, we here at Two Maids and a Mop, we're experiencing some really rapid growth in the face of the pandemic. As much as it scares us, and from a public health perspective, we're kind of a prime benefactor to a lot of the demand out there because of what we do. We kill germs, and we dust a few dust bunnies too. But it's been a good ride this year, and hopefully the future is still just as bright as it has always been for us. But I've never seen any type of growth like what you experienced there in Minneapolis, and so I'd love to hear more about the challenges that you experienced, what you did to overcome them. I know you talked a little bit about the culture. So if you're okay, maybe we can arrange another time to talk about some of those things down the road.
That'd be great. I'd be happy to help, and it's been great chatting with you.
You bet. Before we go, I want to ask you just a couple quick questions. One, both of them fairly easy, but maybe kind of complex at the same time. So you talked about there were three big things that kind of made this thing all happen. If you could talk to a small business owner, especially a small business home service owner, and only had 60 seconds to talk with them, what would you say in those 60 seconds to that entrepreneur?
Boy, now you're putting me on the spot. I would really try to encourage them to define their why. Why are they doing what they're doing? Why are they the best? Hone in on, what your pitch is to a customer, to an employee, and become the chief repeating officer, and make sure that you create alignment so that your customers all know exactly what you stand for, and show them the value. And you have to explain it. You can't just say, I'm here to clean. Repeat it. Help them understand why your value exceeds your price. And do the same thing with all your employees to create alignment so that everyone can become that chief repeating officer. And then I guess secondly, deputize everybody to be on your sales team. All your employees, your bookkeeper, your accountant, the most boring person in your business, no offense, needs to be able to promote your business. You have to give them the vernacular and the language, and then really deputize them and set the expectation that they are going to sell. They're going to help you grow because it's everybody's job.
All right, Michael. Well, I couldn't have said it better. You and I share a lot of the same ideology, and I'm proud to know you. Congratulations on all of your success. We'll maybe have another conversation down the road about, some of those challenges that you experienced during that decade-long ascent from, nothing to something. But congrats on everything. You are a sort of a hero, I guess, in our home services industry. So we all want to be like you. So for anyone that wants to reach out and connect with you and learn more about what you're doing there to grow other home service businesses, feel free to share contact information with them now.
Sure. I'm not too cool to provide my email. My personal email is Michael C, as in Charlie, Michael C6, just the digit 6, Michael C6@gmail.com. And just a quick promotion. I do run handful of companies. The ones that I think are relevant are an investment group called Booyah Capital Partners, and we invest in home service companies. We provide capital and strategic leadership and take a minority stake in home service companies to help them navigate the path and utilize our experience and our capital. And the second is called Banana Stand Marketing, and I buy radio for home service companies. Buy a couple $1 million a year and help people figure out how to do what we do. So be happy to share some conversations. You won't find those businesses on the web, but happy to share a conversation. michaelc6@gmail.com.
All right, Michael, thanks again for your time today. Congrats again on all your success, and hopefully we'll get to talk again down the road.
I'd appreciate that. Thanks so much for your time, Rob.
All right.
Hey guys, Beth Lovett in Business Development. If you enjoyed this episode, then please share with your friends, and don't forget to tune in to the next episode of Cleaning Up. Have you ever wondered if you wanted to be in business for yourself? If so, then don't hesitate to give me a call at 205-789-8027 or email me at bethl@ineedamaid.com. And if you just want a window shop, then you can see us online at twomaidsfranchise.com.